So Graham, you mentioned going through the deep recession,
Right.
and going back then, none of us knew when all of a sudden overnight our businesses just, everything stopped, everything shut down, and suddenly our world looked very different. And one of our largest customers was actually shut down by the FDIC. And it was really tough when we had clients that we had grown with over the years that suddenly were struggling, and we were in the midst of that. And there was just this spirit of fear around us everywhere. And now we've had the similar thing happen in a time of uncertainty with the COVID-19 that we're dealing with now. And instead of being at the top of the needs pyramid of self-actualization, we plummet instantly as people and as business leaders to survival mode. We are certainly in unprecedented times as we're watching this global pandemic continue to grow and change and impact our world. As leaders, it's especially difficult because we're not only having to maneuver our family through these difficult times, we're having to lead our businesses forward. So in our episode today, I want to talk with you about the leader's role in turbulent times and give you some takeaways of how you can help to lead your company forward when times are tough. I'd like to welcome Graham Yahtzee to join me today.
Thanks. So today we're going to go backwards. We're going to look back at the challenging times you actually had to lead through, whether it was 9/11, the 2001 dot-com bust, or the recession, the Great Recession, some of the things that have impacted your business over the years and what you did to lead your team. And so the first thing we'd like to cover is being courageous. And what does that look like through turbulent times?
Okay. Definitely. I think it is so important. One of the main roles that a leader plays in challenging times is to be courageous. And that is not always easy to do. And looking back at my own leadership, there were times when I became paralyzed by some of the things that were going on around us. So Graham, you mentioned going through the deep recession.
Right.
And going back then, none of us knew when all of a sudden overnight our businesses just, everything stopped, everything shut down, and suddenly our world looked very different. And one of our largest customers was actually shut down by the FDIC. And it was really tough when we had clients that we had grown with over the years that suddenly were struggling, and we were in the midst of that. And there was just this spirit of fear around us everywhere. And now we've had the similar thing happen in a time of uncertainty with the COVID-19 that we're dealing with now. And instead of being at the top of the needs pyramid of self-actualization, we plummet instantly as people and as business leaders to survival mode. And we're just trying to figure out how do we take care of the basic needs, at home, feeding our families, at work, how are we going to cover the next payroll? And it's hard not to get paralyzed by fear. And the fear center in our brains, or the amygdala, is just going on fire right now in this type of a difficult time. And when this happens, we really can't operate in an optimal way because we're in this constant fight or flight mode. We can't think clearly. We can't operate effectively, and it's not a way to be. And I found myself, when we were going through the deep recession at one point, where I too got myself caught up and paralyzed in just the fear that I was feeling. And what I realized is that my emotions and my attitude are catchy. Just like this virus is catchy, our attitudes are catchy. And as a leader, when I'm showing up with fear, my team is looking to me as an example of how they need to act. So if I'm showing up with fear, then they're going to have that fear too. On the other hand, if I'm making the decision, and it's a choice every day to be courageous, to be that courageous leader, if I'm making that choice, then they see that it's going to be okay. And together we can lead through this type of situation. Another thing that I wanted to comment on is, as a leader, we lead from different places at times. Sometimes we lead from the back.
Sure.
And sometimes we need to come alongside team members. But one of the things that I've found is in times of crisis is the time that the leader needs to lead from the front. That's not the time where you step back and say, you know what, I've got a management team, they've got this. When you're in times of crisis like this, you as the leader need to lead from the front. It's so important because your team needs you to step up and be courageous. And when you do that, then they can do the same, and it can change their attitudes. And again, coming alongside is important as well, that you're willing to roll up your sleeves and get alongside your team and help them walk side by side with them through this experience.
Yeah, it reminds me when you said FDIC, the bank I worked for, that the leaders there vanished. They just locked the doors, locked the floors, put somebody with a gun at the front door. It wasn't a whole lot of fun. And so, yeah, being the leader and being out front and doing that is critical, I believe. Making sure you're aware of where your team needs you, whether it's behind, alongside, leading in front. I think that's critical as far as being part of the leader. And being aware of that is so important. So make sure you know where to lead. And at this point in time, like you said, it's probably time to lead in front.
Definitely.
So the second thing let's talk about is being a courageous leader. You have to be that shelter in the storm. What does shelter in the storm mean to you?
Thanks for asking. It's so important for us as a leader to be the light for our team members, to be that shelter in the storm. There is so much fear that's going on, and people are worrying about their jobs and putting getting their next paycheck, putting food on the table. And as leaders, we can help by letting them know that we care, letting them know that we're there, taking the time to listen to our team members and communicate with them. I think in these kind of situations, we can really provide that shelter when we're showing up with a courageous heart, when we're ready to listen to the team members, where we're just not coming in and taking charge, but we're also taking time to step back and listen to our team members' concerns and be empathetic and compassionate to what they're going through.
I was just going to say that being a shelter just seemed to me being compassionate and understanding and kind of joining them where they are and understanding where they are. And sometimes as leaders, we're viewed as being separated from them, and that we're all human. We're all part of that same human race, and we're also connected. And just because somebody has a different role doesn't mean that they're in a different position. We're all in this together.
Definitely. And everybody's facing different challenges too. So being willing and able to meet your team members wherever they may be in different spots, and everybody reacts to fear and anxiety a little bit differently. So taking the time to meet your team where they are. And then as part of that, being that shelter, you do need to set expectations, because something that really helps is when you're in this constant shift of things ever changing, what really helps a team is to have some boundaries and this safe place in which to be. And part of that is setting expectations on how we're going to behave through this time. So we just had a meeting virtually where we got together with our executive team this week, and we talked about how we were going to behave through this time, that we were going to commit to be aligned as a management team, that we were going to commit to having positive attitudes, to support our team members and to really come alongside and support them, and that we were going to all behave in these positive ways and commit to that, because it's so easy to get caught up in some negative talk, and this is certainly not time for that. I remember another challenging time that we went through where we had one of our larger customers actually go bankrupt, and it was a complete surprise to us. And overnight, we had our projects, of course, drop because this client was no longer in business. It affected our cash flow. And in one of our management meetings, we had some pretty negative talk going on. We were venting about how we felt and how frustrated we were, and that we didn't know this was coming, and what were we going to do. And there's always a little bit of that. You've got to get that out, but you have to make the decision when you're going to cut it off. And I remember one of my managers said to me, I don't even know why we're having this meeting. It's like we're rearranging chairs on the Titanic. So
there you go.
Yeah, not good. And so I realized that
it
was toxic. We were allowing ourselves to get caught up in the angst and the frustration of it all. And you do feel that way, but you have to make this commitment to each other that talk isn't going to work. And I realized that I wasn't helping, but even contributing to it at this point. So leaders out there, don't be contributing to the negative talk and the venting in front of your team. This is something in a time where you've got to come together and talk positively be looking for the opportunities and the silver linings. In times of challenge, there are also times of opportunity and ways to be creative and innovative in times like never before. So that's really where the focus needs to be.
Good. So we've talked about being courageous. We've talked about kind of being that shelter, maybe creating the bumpers like in bowling, put those bumpers up so that you keep people in lane and making sure we're moving forward and on target for the bowling pins.
Yes.
And so what else can we do as leaders? Give us some ideas or something specific that we could really just take away that we can use during these times that maybe you've learned in the past or used in the past.
Okay. Well, one of the things I talked about a little bit here already is to really set the boundaries, the behavioral boundaries. Well, that's true. I realized that it just doesn't work to allow people to go down these paths that are toxic, these toxic behaviors. And I was allowing a little bit of grace and letting some of my management team vent, and it really was going down a path that was not productive. And I needed to set those boundaries of those behaviors. And so I would suggest that if you haven't already, to have a team meeting where you give a little bit of time for people to express their concerns and their anxiety, and then you come together and make the decision that these are the behaviors that we're going to have as an organization going through this time together, and this is how we're going to act, and this is how we're going to be. We are going to bring our positive attitudes and creative attitudes to every single conversation. So that would be an example, number one. Number two, communicate a lot more. I realized that in times before I didn't communicate enough, and in these type of times it's really important to communicate a lot. I don't think you can communicate too much. Don't worry about, I don't want to bug my managers and this type of thing. It's important that we really are over communicating, sending out regular correspondence to let people know what's going on.
And not just managers, but everybody throughout the organization, and in making it so that it's open to family members potentially, making sure that everybody just kind of bring that worry down and making it transparent is pretty helpful during these times.
Right. I have another colleague who did a live town hall meeting where he allowed everyone on his team to jump on live and ask any question that they had, and something like that can be really, really helpful to do as well. And then another client of ours set up a way where their team members could actually come and pick up emergency supplies at their offices. And so a great way to help people in times of need. So that was another thing that people did.
It's a great idea. And like you said, now is the time to be innovative, be creative, come look at something new. The restaurants, for instance, that are really struggling are trying to do delivery that they never have before, or maybe they're open in the back door and you can kind of slide in, grab your food and go.
Yes.
So looking at these opportunities that might be out there, they're out there. Mm-hmm. I talked to a few clients, and you wouldn't know it, but hot tubs are exploding right now. Everybody's at home. Everybody's bored. They're at home, and it's, let's go. We got to get the hot tub fixed. Or I want my pool ready to go. It's early yet, but let's heat up the pool because I want to do laps because I'm not this is a professor actually up at Western. Wanted his pool so he could do laps because the pool is closed. He can't go there, and it's not warm, which is normally when he would start his pool. So they're swamped. Pet beds. Everybody wants to protect their pet during this time. Everybody wants toilet paper during this time, and tomatoes. I'm not sure why all three go together, but they do. So, making sure, looking for those opportunities, they're out there. It's scary to look beyond. It's easy to get stuck in that fear and that wall, but the opportunities are out there if you look.
Good. Another thing that we can do as a leader, and I would highly recommend, is be as transparent and honest with your team members as you possibly can be. I don't know if any of you have any fear of flying. It's something that I don't particularly like. Graham holds my hand on planes. I don't like the turbulence. But I will tell you what gives me comfort is when the pilot comes on, when you start to feel the turbulence, and the pilot comes on and says, I'm letting you know that we're going to be going through some turbulence now. And it's going to be going on for a while as we go through this bumpy area, and I will come back on and let you know when you can, unfasten your seatbelts.
Right.
And when I hear the pilot's voice, even though he's telling me we're going to be going through some turbulence for a while, which I know is not going to be fun, I am assured that he's got us and that he's going to take us through that turbulence. So as a leader, don't be afraid to say, team, things aren't good right now. Team, we have these concerns, and being specific about what those things are. Be transparent about them. And you know what? It's going to give comfort to your team. Is it going to scare them? Maybe some of the information, sure, but wouldn't you rather have them know? Wouldn't you rather know? And that's how they're going to feel as well. They're going to rather know these things. And also,
they'll make it up anyway.
Well,
they're going to go worst case scenario. So
this is true. Yeah, putting the information out there allows them to not speculate, because they're going to go through that worst case scenario.
Absolutely.
The other good thing about it is, one of the things we've done with our team is when we brought the problems to them, often they come up with ideas that we haven't thought of. And they can be, we're in it together, right? So you don't have to think as the leader that you're on your own and involve your team.
Yeah,
exactly. So some good things that we've covered today. We talked about how in these tumultuous times, we have to be courageous leaders. And as courageous leaders, we need to be a shelter in the storm. We need to provide a safe place for our team members and be that shelter in the storm for them. And then we've given you some tangible ideas and ways that can help you really bring your team together to help you lead your team and your company forward in this difficult time.
Well, and I think that, I'll just do a couple quotes.
Yes.
Something that,
would you?
Yeah, something that I found. The first one is, and it's in time of fear, right? The only time a man can be brave is when he is afraid. The only time a man can be brave is when he's afraid. Just think about that, by George R.R. Martin. Another one by President Roosevelt, Teddy, not FDR. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how strong the man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, comes up short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause. That's powerful. That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, I've always loved that quote.
What a great quote. So, how do we want to close today?
Well, thanks for joining us today in our Intentional Leadership podcast and the role of a leader in challenging times. And I've included today in this podcast a downloadable handout for you with some questions and things to think about. It's great for you to use on your own or to use with your team. So that's available now at JanelleBruland.com. And if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
We're at home, so you might as well email us. You're at home too.
Yes, exactly. Let's connect. We release a new episode each month, and sometimes we have some bonus episodes that we release in between. So stay on the lookout. If you like what you're receiving in this podcast, please subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. The more that you do this, give it a good rating. The more that you do this, the more that we can continue to provide these episodes for you and help grow our leadership and grow ourselves as people.
Well, this is definitely an opportunity. We can all grow. We can all grow together, and we'll get through this together.
We will. We will indeed. Remember, when you grow as a leader, your company will grow. You will grow. You can transform your leadership, crush your goals, and love your life.